Coming up on this week's podcast, does F1 have a wet weather problem? Has the sport outgrown Spa? Is Max Verstappen back in the title hunt? What's up with Lewis Hamilton? And when will Kimi Antonelli's European nightmare end? It's time for the Racing News 365 podcast. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Racing News 365 podcast, looking back at last weekend's Belgian Grand Prix, but also looking ahead to the final race before the summer break taking place this weekend in Hungary. From Racing News 365, my name is Nick Golding, and I'm delighted to be joined, as always, by 2023 Young Journalist of the Year, Sam Absolutely Coop, and the man, the myth, the almighty legend, who is about 30 minutes from his nearest airport. It is the one, the only, the lead editor of Racing News 365, Ian Parks. And Ian, you are, of course, as I pointed out, once again, not at home, but also not at an airport hotel, which is where the podcasts have been recorded recently. Where on earth are you?
As you pointed out, I'm 30 minutes away, mate. Apologies for the quality of the audio, because I know we do get some feedback and comments about the quality of the audio. I am in my room at a hotel. It sounds a little bit echoey to me through these. I don't know how it's coming across to you guys, but that's the reason why, folks, just in case if the audio quality is not as good as it ordinarily should be.
Well, to us, at least to me, you are crystal clear. Guys, okay, we've got to get on with this because we have so much to discuss from the Belgian Grand Prix, most of it based on what actually happened before the race properly got underway. But we've got to start, of course, with our fun question. And the question is, because, of course, all the drivers finished in Spa, excluding 2021, which I don't even count as a race. It's gone from my memory. When was the last time all drivers finished the Belgian Grand Prix?
Of the Belgian Grand Prix?
Well, it certainly wasn't.
At Spa-Francorchamps in particular as well.
It certainly wasn't 1998. I can tell you that much for free.
Sam with a funny.
I don't genuinely.
This is really
really no idea.
I'm proud of this one.
2017.
Yeah.
Sam's going 2017. Ian, any answer?
2010.
Okay, the answer was a trick question, because the 2025 Belgian Grand Prix was the first race for F1 at Spa featuring not one retirement. Of course, again, like I said, not including 2021. So if you take away 2021, no Belgian Grand Prix, apart from yesterday, of course, recording on Monday, has ever had every single driver finish. There's a stat for you. I was quite proud of that question. And on that point,
will be doffing his cap to you, mate. I'm pretty sure. He will. And I was proud of that one. So that's like a lot of research. But anyways, I mean, the biggest takeaway, of course, I imagine it's going to be the same for all three of us. But Ian, what was yours? Do you want to take it away? You start first. You go first. Go on.
Me? Okay. Well, my biggest takeaway is that, well, I mean, thank you very much. My biggest takeaway was the fact that we had an 80-minute delay. I mean, we're going to talk about this in a lot more detail in a few minutes, because it's obviously a massive talking point, and it was interesting listening to the drivers and the team principals, and it kind of felt that despite the criticism from the fans at the length of the delay, that actually the paddock itself was kind of 50-50 split in terms of it being the wrong call for the delay to be that long, and then the 4 laps behind the safety car and then the rolling start, whilst actually some were actually defending the FIA over the call. For me, it's the fact, more importantly, that it feels like now, maybe it's just the current era of cars and maybe it changes next year, but for me, it feels like we can no longer have a wet race in Formula One. I personally, before even working in the industry as a fan, was always looking forward to wet races. I love looking at the forecast and seeing rain coming. It's actually gotten to a point now where I kind of close my eyes and hope for the best in that there's no rain on the radar, because it's gotten to that point where actually I'm looking forward to dry races, believe it or not. Sam, is your takeaway
if there is rain on the radar, just very, very quickly, if there is rain on the radar, it comes during the race rather than at the start, as we've seen in the past, and then things just don't get going until race control decides, right, this is now super safe, we can go. As Max Verstappen pointed out, look, we're going to get into this a lot, and I think you can tell this is going to be quite a good talking point. As Max Verstappen pointed out, you might as well just wait for it to dry up completely and just start on slicks. But yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Sam, anything to add?
I mean, well, on that piece, very quickly, seems to be a real division between the experienced drivers and the newer drivers. Liam Lawson came out and kind of was like, no, it definitely wasn't ready to start the race. Race direction made the right call. It always feels like the drivers who have experience of racing in those conditions, like Max, like Lewis, were like, yeah, we're fine with it, we're happy. Whereas the newer kind of cohort who are used to this brand of, we can't race in the wet, or it's very difficult to race in the wet, were the ones who were less comfortable. So, I mean, that's a take home in itself. But to add something a little bit different, I think the fight for the victory, a big take home was, for me, that Lando kind of gave it away in many ways, or at least failed to capitalize on an opportunity to put Oscar under some serious pressure by making those mistakes. And yes, he was pushing hard. The conditions were, tricky at points. And it's very difficult in this era to go kind of qualifying lap after qualifying lap because of how technical, how evolved everything is. But that doesn't save the fact that he made a few critical errors that prevented him from being within striking distance at any point, really. And yes, the pit stop wasn't great, and there were a few other things. Ultimately, he let the door open at the restart by having a really scruffy exit to turn one, which opened up the entire rundown, to borrow from Andrea Stella, leaving him exposed to Oscar Piastri, and that was game set match, because he then made further mistakes. So I fully maintain that this championship will go down to the wire, but he cannot be making mistakes like that when it is a Oscar v Max straight fight.
Yeah, of course, Oscar does now have a 15-point lead in the standings following his victory. Very quickly, let's do and look back.
Should I say my biggest takeaway?
I thought yours. Oh, sorry, go. I thought yours was agreeing with me. Okay,
I
apologise. I apologise.
Yeah. I just wanted, as Sam's pointed out, because obviously we're going to discuss that topic a lot. So yes. I thought I would come in with something just a little bit different.
I apologise.
No, it's all right. Don't worry. Yeah, just wanted to throw something else in there. It is the fact that no matter the name, no matter how big the personality, no matter how big that person, no matter how long that personality has been involved in Formula One, that regardless of all that unfolded and we discussed and took place building up into the Belgian Grand Prix weekend, that actually life just goes on. And I'm referring here to the fact that Red Bull was without Christian Horner for the first time in its 20-year history, for the first time in 406 Grand Prix. He was not actually in attendance at a Grand Prix. And how it felt, did it feel any different from the inside? Only the Red Bull people involved can give us a better understanding of that. But from the outside looking in, you just watched everything going on in the paddock building. You just watch everything going on in the garage. You watch the pit wall, and it had Laura Mekies on it and not Christian Horner. But as I say, it was just the same Red Bull, effectively. Music still pumping out the garage loud. People still going about their business as they should be doing. As I say, life just goes on. It was the same when Bernie Ecclestone left Formula One 8 years ago. The biggest personality the sport had for many, many, many years. And here we had another one in Christian Horner that's been embedded into this sport for the past 2 decades. And it was as if nothing had really changed, in all fairness, with regard to Red Bull. So, yeah, just a simple observation. As I say, I'm sure it felt a little bit different for the people inside Red Bull in attendance at the Grand Prix weekend, even for those at the factory not receiving any direction, Christian. I'm sure there was a bit of a difference, and they got a different voice in their ear in terms of Laurel. But as I say, from the outside looking in, business.
That's quite a good takeaway in all fairness. Actually, something I didn't really think about personally. Yeah. Anyways, it's the point exactly of our biggest takeaways. Let's do very quickly looking back at our Belgian Grand Prix predictions. And like the race, not really much to report in all honesty. Probably one of our worst weekends as a collective.
I got one right.
You did. I mean, I only picked up 2 points. I was last because I got Piastri. I got Piastri and Norris both a position below where they finished. So I only got 2 points. Ian, correct. You got Lando on pole, so you got 3 points for that. The only other one you got was saying Lando would win the race. He finished second, so you got a point there. So you finished on 4 points. Sam, you got 3 because, of course, you had the top 3 in the wrong order. Blatch, you had Verstappen in 3rd. He finished 4th. So again, only points for a driver finishing above or below where you predicted. And in terms of Boris, who represented the fans from the Netherlands, also said Norris would get pole and said Norris would win, of course, again, finish 2nd. So that got Boris 4 points. In terms of the championship, well, not a lot's really changed, except for the fact Sam is last on 59 points. In joint 2nd is myself and the fans on 62. And Ian, despite the fact it was an awful weekend from all of us, has still increased his lead and is now on 86 points. Anyways,
who was quickly? Yeah, who run through the
correct.
happened?
My bad. Apologies. So fastest pit stop. We all said Ferrari. It was Red Bull again.
Maybe now we start pivoting towards Red Bull for
possibly.
On this one.
Possibly. And all of us got 10th place wrong, and all of us got the fastest lap wrong. So yeah, a pretty bad weekend from us all. It's got to be said. I'm Kimi Antonelli.
I think it was Kimi. I was going to say
Kimi. It was Kimi Antonelli.
I'm pretty sure that I said I got the pole and the winner the wrong way around, didn't I?
Yes, you said Oscar on pole and Lando to win. So maybe, mate. If you were So and that annoying. Is why you are last. Anyways, before we carry on with the podcast,
bad predicting.
It was very bad predicting. Right, before we carry on with the podcast, a very quick mention that over at Racing News 365 on our YouTube, we are doing a giveaway. If you'd like to win an Aston Martin cap, all you've got to do to be with a chance of winning a cap is to be subscribed to this channel and comment below any video I want to win. It is as simple as that. The competition will come to an end at the end of the Hungarian Grand Prix, with the winners to be announced the following week, of course, the first week of the summer break. Best of luck and get subscribing. Right, let's get on with the first talking point, and it's a real debate. And for those who are watching our podcast on YouTube, let us know your thoughts on this discussion in the comments below, because of course it is about the 80-minute delay, which took place effectively ahead of the Belgian Grand Prix. It didn't really get underway, so the formation lap was red flagged. And it's an interesting one because I was listening to a lot of drivers' audio this morning. And again, just note we're recording this on Monday morning, as we always do. And it sounded like, an Ian, please obviously disagree with me if I'm wrong on this, obviously you were in the paddock, but it sounded like it was very much, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, a 50-50 split in the paddock in terms of those who criticised the delay and the 4 laps behind the safety car and the choice to do a rolling start. And then 50% actually backing the FIA and defending. Charles Leclerc, very vocal actually, pointing out that, historically, Spa is so dangerous, it's got to be taken into account. And even Oscar Piastri saying that actually there's been discussions with the FIA to play on the safer side rather than take a risk. So from that point of view, it's got to be argued that quite clearly, whatever's being discussed between the drivers and the FIA seem to have taken on board what's being said to play it safer in Spa. Again, as I pointed out, I love a wet race, but it's gotten to a point now where I kind of dread it when I see rain on the radar, because you don't quite know, firstly, if we're going to get a race, and if we do get a race, how much of it is going to be under green flag running. But it raises for me a bigger question, because we've already seen some wet races this year and some brilliant wet races in the past, looking back at Sao Paulo last year. We know that Spa is going to be a biannual event, obviously, going forwards very, very soon in a couple of years. Is this a case of F1's the problem with the current cars, or is this a case of Spa for F1 now, when it is wet, is too dangerous? And surely, if it is too wet, if it's too dangerous in the wet, does F1 now need to only go to circuits where it can race in both the dry and the wet? Sam, I'll come to you first on this point. What did you make of the delay, and what are your overall thoughts on the topic?
Well, I mean, the fact that you're saying that there was division in the paddock between whether they should have started earlier or whether the delay was correct. I mean, that's the definition of damned if you do, damned if you don't, to a T, isn't it? Really, let's face it.
Yeah.
The race direction could not win in that scenario.
Yeah.
And just to build on what I said earlier, in terms of there seemed to be a bit of a divide in the drivers, ones that were more experienced and ones who are less experienced. In many ways, you could argue that Max and Lewis are looking at that as a prime opportunity. Max is starting 4th, lower than he wanted to. He felt that 3rd was on the cards and that that's really where he should be. And he knows that he has the skill, the ability to make the difference in those conditions. So, of course, in many ways, he wants to race. And Lewis, starting all the way at the back, is going, the more changeable, the more uncertainty in these conditions, the better for me. So, again, vested interest for both of them to get this race started. I think with Spa-Francorchamps specifically, it is dangerous. That the Eau Rouge Raidillon portion of this track, we've had 2 deaths there in the last 6 years, and one of those was in very difficult conditions, similar to what we kind of had at the start of the race. All it takes is for one driver to lose it going up that hill, get T-boned, and then, yeah, exactly as we've seen, with the likes of Antoine Hubert and Dino Vanthof. I cannot completely understand why that risk is not deemed acceptable, especially when you're talking about the speeds in which F1 cars can manage these days. So I'm not mad at the decision to delay the race. Was it delayed too long? You could argue yes, because we got to a point where it was rapidly approaching the crossover point for dry tyres, as we saw within a few laps. And also the argument that if you send the drivers out, they will dry the track far quicker than natural conditions or any other machinery that you've sent out to specifically dry the track. So, yeah, I can understand again why people feel like it was too long. I appreciate I'm sitting on the fence quite a lot with this, but this just exemplifies how difficult it is for race direction to make a call. So I don't think you really kind of place blame at their feet. Yes, it is their job, but they are just trying to do what they can with the best information. And there was a lot of uncertainty. The 3-hour clock rule. We had team principals, Ayo Komatsu, believing that 3-hour window had started. Turns out it hadn't. So, it just shows how difficult it is to deal with these conditions. And then to address the wet tyre point, they are redundant because the visibility, the spray is so difficult. And that's where F1 needs to make steps to ensure that we can go racing in the wet, because it is critical to allow those conditions to be palatable for the field, for F1, for fans.
It's gone too safe, mate. No, it's gone too safe. Yesterday was ridiculous. Because let me put it this way. I was on the grid when the rain hit. I got pretty wet. You guys saw I was taking all the images to add to the blog. And Sam, I hope you used a few that I was sending over at least, because I didn't get to follow it, unfortunately. If that rain that hit the grid, I think it was 2:30 or something like that, local time, about half an hour before the race was due to start, that rain that had hit the grid had hit the race. Say if we'd started dry and that rain had hit the race would have continued. It was not that heavy enough at any stage for a red flag to have been thrown if the rain had fallen during the race itself. Also, additionally, what is the point in Pirelli having full wet tyres if the FIA will not allow them to be used? Now, okay, I get the point that there has been criticism about the full wets and they're not that good of a tyre. But bottom line is they are there for a reason, and that is for them to be used in really wet conditions. They still do a job at the end of the day. They still have enough disbursement of water that the drivers can still race on them. And as I said, the rain that fell, you would have had a full wet tyre on that car at some stage, but it was not enough to have stopped a race. So why on earth did the race not start in, as Max and Lewis both pointed out, that it should have gone ahead much sooner than it did. And I fully agree with them. Okay, yes, we've got the safety aspect of Spa-Francorchamps, but the bottom line on motor racing is motorsport is dangerous. We know that. Okay, yes, I'm not belittling the fact that 2 drivers have died, but these are, and we're talking in the junior categories as well. Lando Norris had a horrendous crash, I remember. I think he was in qualifying a few years back, going up Eau Rouge and out of Raidillon. But as I say, these are the best drivers in the world. And those conditions for me at no stage, and I repeat again, would have red flagged the Grand Prix. So I just felt that, as you say, you rightly point out, Sam, Ruben Marquez was damned if he did, damned if he didn't, no matter what he would have done. And of course, you would have had the comments ringing in his ears from just 3 weeks previously with regard to the Silverstone race and the conditions there, which actually were, for me, far worse that I felt than at any stage during the Grand Prix, even during that 80-minute window, when, we had to wait and wait and wait. So obviously I think it was Isaac Hadji ran into the back of Kimi Antonelli, wasn't it, at Silverstone, when the visibility was just so bad that he couldn't see and just went into the back of him. So Rui would naturally have been thinking about that. But I do think it was way too safe. And the fact that we had the 4 formation laps behind the safety car, 4 safety car laps effectively before racing was run, again, too much. Once things were starting to clear up and brighten up, I mean, the sun was shining when we had those 4 laps going behind the safety car. You could quite comfortably have started that race from the grid at that stage. But I just think that was too safe for me. Way too safe.
And of course, for those, like I said, who are watching this podcast, be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comments below on the delay. And if you're listening to this on any audio platform, Spotify, for example, hop over to YouTube. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Get involved so we can have a look and see what you all think, because we enjoy to hear your feedback and thoughts. Let's move on, though, because, of course, Oscar Piastri, in the end, was victorious, winning his first race since the Spanish Grand Prix, which feels like a lifetime ago now, increasing his lead to 15 points. And it was a funny one because he quite clearly learned from what happened in the sprint race where he lost out to Max Verstappen at Le Mans. He did what Max did to him on Lando when the race finally got underway. In the end, controlled it, cruised away, won the race by 3.4 seconds, managed his medium tyres brilliantly. And Ian, that was that. Oscar extends his lead.
I know. All the fun and games was in the 80 minutes beforehand, wasn't it? And we were just waiting for that race to get started. Look, you've just heard me go on a little bit of a minor rant about the fact that we had those 4 laps behind the safety car, the rolling start. I pointed out, Nick, and it was actually pointed out by, I think, one of the drivers, wasn't it, that when you looked at the grid, because we'd actually had those 4 laps behind the safety car, naturally the racing line going along the start-finish straight meant that if we'd gone to a standing start, anybody on that racing line would have benefited, because the inside line, quite obviously, was much wetter. So I can see why we had a rolling start, even though we shouldn't have had a rolling start in the first place. It should have been a standing start from the get-go, from lap 1. Instead, we actually didn't start the race until lap 5 after those 4 laps. And then, it was just what unfolded afterwards was just pretty much a non-entity of a Grand Prix, wasn't it? We had a beautiful overtake from Oscar Piastri on Lando. Slight error from Lando coming out of La Source hairpin out of turn 1. And that just allowed Oscar to get that little bit closer than it perhaps might have ordinarily been able to do. And then just the drag up the hill through Eau Rouge with the spray, as I say, wouldn't have been able to have seen anything, I don't think, but for the flashing red light on the back of Lando's car, and just a brilliant execution of an overtake in wet conditions. But it just goes to show, doesn't it? These drivers are the best in the world. This is what we know that they are capable of. And that was a perfect example of what can be done in those conditions, which is why I think, getting back to the point, I know I'm probably labouring on it, but I do think we had perfect opportunity to go racing in ordinary wet conditions anyway. So, and what followed, just the ground effect cars married to that circuit, the evolution of these cars has just meant that at a circuit like Spa-Francorchamps, it's almost impossible to overtake. We saw that perfect encapsulation of that in the sprint race on Saturday. Near enough 15 laps Oscar Piastri spent in the slipstream of Max Verstappen, and then 14, 13 laps within DRS range, and he couldn't pull off an overtake along the Kemmel Straight into the chicane. So it was just a real shame, because Spa is such an iconic, fantastic track. We've seen so many wonderful races, so many brilliant overtakes over the years, and it was just a dead duck. As I'm going to use that phrase again, it was a dead duck of the Grand Prix. Just such a shame when we could have had so much excitement. not to be.
One driver I felt for, and Sam, I'll come to you on this, was actually Max Verstappen, because Max was one of several drivers who increased the downforce on their car, fitted a bigger rear wing in anticipation of a wet race, and as a result, obviously qualified in fourth. And it was a really interesting piece of radio once he crossed the finish line on Sunday between him and his race engineer, was that, the race engineer pointing out that, Max, had we known it would be a dry race, we would have, not gone for this setup. We would have kept to the lower downforce, the paper thin rear wing. And we saw in the sprint race on Saturday just how powerful that was for Max and how good he looked to be able to fight the McLarens and ultimately beat Oscar for the sprint win. I felt for Max because obviously we now know that his contract clause it's expired effectively. He can't finish any lower than third in the standings come the summer break. So looks like unless something absolutely crazy happens, he's going to be at Red Bull for next season, as Ian has predicted several times already this year and last year. But actually, I felt for Max because, again, had the drivers, and not just Max, but had the field known that we'd have this delay and that the race would effectively, with the exception of the first 10, 11 laps, be a dry race, Max and Red Bull would have gone for the low downforce setup, and you've got to say, would have been a real threat.
Even with hindsight, it's difficult to argue that Red Bull did anything wrong with their decision, because all the information they had at the time pointed towards changing the setup to a high downforce setup in preparation of race, particularly, not that they would have known it, but particularly given that Charles had, a low downforce setup himself. So you offsetting, kind of, opportunity there, particularly in the wet. And that was perfectly shown by how much more racy Max was on the intermediate tyres over those first few laps, putting Charles under some real pressure, some really good racing by the two of them, and he just wasn't able to emulate that once everyone had switched over to the medium tyres. He was almost consigned to his fate, or resigned to his fate at that point. So, yeah, he is kind of brutally unlucky by that. Had not the best qualifying. It was a little bit scruffy, and I think it was 3 milliseconds that separated him and Charles on the grid. So, in many ways, he kind of sealed his own fate there on that, and it's not very often that we kind of say that of Max. So, yeah, it was a pretty brutal and unlucky turn of events for Red Bull. But they'll look at that, as I said, and they'll go, well, we did everything right. We just... Yeah. There was no way they could have predicted the circumstances would have unfolded in the way they did. So, yeah, and as for the contract, I mean, realistically, he would have wanted to finish third, which would have put that clause made it even more redundant, if possible, because, let's face it, redundant is in some ways a binary state. It's either redundant or it's not. So, yeah, it's increasingly unlikely that he will be on the move next year. As Ian said, it was never really a wise decision to do that. But that was how things were trending anyway over the weekend. Some of the things that Toto Wolff has said in terms of that he wants to move forward with Kimi and George, it was already heading in the direction that Max wouldn't be going to Mercedes next year. So, as you say, unless there's something highly, highly unlikely that transpires in the next few weeks, Max will be at Red Bull next year. And I think it's probably the best move for him.
Just something actually.
Just very quickly, just to conclude, I think the most pertinent comments of anybody that came out post-race came actually from the new Red Bull team principal, Laurent Mekies. And you've got to bear in mind that Laurent worked for the FIA as deputy race director and also as safety director. And even he turned around and said that he was surprised by the fact that they didn't go racing sooner. And of course, there was wearing his Red Bull cap, of course, quite naturally, for the first time this weekend. He was speaking from a Red Bull perspective, that the fact that they had put Max's car in a window to cope with the potential wet conditions, and basically they never got the opportunity pretty much to race in those wet conditions. But this was the guy that used to work for the FIA saying he was surprised that things unfolded the way they did. But at least now he knows he's going to be working with Max Verstappen for next year, because as we've pointed out, Max is staying. Contract clause now has expired, or it's not expired so much, but it's become null and void, because we're going to go into the summer break with Max in third position in the Drivers' Championship. Next year could be a different kettle of fish, because the suggestion is that Max has to be in the top 2 by the time we get to the summer break. Otherwise, there could be a trigger of a contract clause. Fascinating stuff, eh, guys?
Let's get through 2025 first. We can talk about 2026 during the winter break. We'll have enough time to talk about it. One driver I want to discuss, and it will lead into a discussion on a team, is Charles Leclerc, who, to give him credit, with obviously Ferrari having the new rear suspension, delivered, I thought, a really solid weekend and remarkably picked up his 5th podium of the season. He's now claimed the same number of podiums this year as George Russell and Max Verstappen. So despite Ferrari's issues, Leclerc actually trundling along quite nicely compared to Lewis Hamilton, who of course, Lewis eliminated in SQ1, eliminated in Q1. To his credit, actually had a pretty good Sunday, at least for the start of it, in the damp conditions. Made up 10 places, I think it was. Timed the switch perfectly. Was the first one to go from the intermediates to the slicks. The perfect timing helped him make some brilliant places. Ended up finishing in 7th, but of course, as soon as it became dry, had 0 pace, as we'd seen from Lewis throughout the weekend in the dry conditions. Couldn't overtake Alex Albon in a brilliant 6th for Williams. But it's got to be said, Ian, Leclerc doing the business really, really well for Ferrari.
It's been coming. I mean, that was his 4th podium of the season.
5th, same as Max and George.
So, as you say, he's been trundling along in the background without taking too many plaudits in many respects, but he's been doing the job that you would fully expect of someone that has been for Ferrari for the length of time that he has been. Of course, a lot made of what Lewis is going through at the minute. The fact that, as we discussed in one of our updates, I think it was post-Thursday, after Lewis came out with his comments that he'd sent these documents into the Ferrari bosses. He'd had these meetings over the 2-week gap that followed the British Grand Prix and basically put forward a load of ideas as to where he feels things should be improved, how processes should be altered, because from what we gather, that he feels that certain groups aren't talking to one another, and therefore there's a bit of a lag in the system with regard to how information is disseminated down the line. So, and obviously the car, what he wants to see from the 26 car, more importantly, because if he doesn't get that car, then 26 could potentially be Lewis's last in Formula One. Let's throw that out there, because he's had 4 really difficult seasons, about 3.5. Going to eventually be 4 by the time we come to the conclusion of this particular year, but it will have been 4 difficult seasons for him with these regulations in which he's struggled with the car. He's just found no harmony with it whatsoever, no matter what was attempted at Mercedes. And now he's jumped into the Ferrari, and despite a different configuration of the Ferrari compared to the Mercedes, he's still not really had too much success with it, despite that sprint victory in China, which we all thought, well, hey, Lewis is back. We've got takeoff of Lewis's F1 career again, and it's just not happened. And then what happened over the weekend, as Lewis pointed out, was just unacceptable with his 2 qualifying performances. And I'm not surprised after everything that he did eventually decide to apologise to the team for that. At least there was a bit of payback with that drive when the conditions were wet, because for 7 laps after the safety car had gone and prior to him triggering the pit stops, he performed like the Lewis that we know of old, delivered some superb overtaking manoeuvres, and against good cars as well. We're not just talking about some of the back markers here. It was against some top line drivers and top line cars as well at the moment, given the way the field is bunched up. So credit to Lewis for that, at least, but just a real shame that he couldn't make any further progress because of the circuit.
He wasn't, of course, the only driver to have a difficult weekend in Belgium. And Sam, I'll come to you on this one, our final Belgium talking point. And it is, of course, the youngest driver on the grid, Kimi Antonelli, whose European nightmare continues. He's now pointless in 6 of the last 7 races, of course, claimed a podium a little while ago in Canada. Those 6 races he's pointless in, all in Europe. So effectively, that's 6 consecutive races in Europe without a point. It seems like he's just low on confidence, low on self-belief. It's just all after such a promising start, and obviously then that podium in Canada. It's just all going wrong at the moment for Kimi.
He's mired in a really horrible downturn in form, isn't he? Like, it's just been brutal. It's almost, in some ways, you know how Sergio Perez the last couple of years, you get to the European season, it all just kind of falls apart for him. It's almost the same way for Kimi. If you look at purely the results and where they fall, obviously it's a little bit different. He is European himself, let's face it. You really feel for him, and I think the fact that it took him so long to come through and do his media duties after, I think it was qualifying.
After qualifying.
And then when he did, he did look tearful. He looked emotional. It says that it shows that he really is going through it. I think what is of solace to him and a saving grace, and it's something that he's highlighted before, is that he fully feels that he is in the environment in a team that is the best suited for a rookie to go through the kind of struggles that he is currently going through. Toto Wolff will be very much an arm around the shoulder. It'll be a very fostering and kind of caring environment for him, which, judging on Kimi's character and how he portrays himself, is what he needs. I'm not surprised that he's going through a downturn in form. This was going to happen. Yes, he is a generational talent as far as everything is suggesting at this stage. And that, I fully believe he will come good. But I don't think it's a huge surprise that he is going through a very, very difficult patch. It was bound to come eventually. Has it gone on longer than you'd maybe hope or expect? Yes. But I think the team just need to embrace him. Nico Rosberg made a very interesting point over the weekend. He was saying that if he was Toto Wolff, he would hand him a contract now. Like, sign it this weekend, get him that boost of confidence. Like, you're our guy. You're staying with us next year. Don't worry about everything else. Let's rebuild from here. And even if they decided that they did want to bring Max in, all the more difficult now, and partner him with George, that he could then kind of, it's not, Kimi's not going to be so expensive, it's difficult to get out of that contract, or you can maybe shuffle him down to a team like, say, Alpine, who will have Mercedes power units next season. So there are options there. So that's an intriguing point. But I fundamentally think that it was still the right decision to promote him to the Mercedes team. I still maintain what I said last week. I think it could be detrimental to his relationship if they did palm him off to a team where he could maybe kind of develop at a slower pace, gain some more experience. So they kind of have made their bed with Kimi as a talent and as a driver at this stage. But you do really feel for him. I just think he needs this summer break to really reset. He's just kind of crawling to it at this stage. But I think he will look back on this year and go, you know what? I learned a hell of a lot. It was fundamental for my development as a driver. And Toto Wolff is one of those people who's always saying that you learn far more when you fail than when you win. So I think he'll look at it as a net gain for Kimi. He has to go through this process.
Got to wonder just how much contract situation might have been playing on his mind as well for someone so young. Because there's been all the speculation about Max coming in, and be it alongside George or be it alongside Kimi. Even so, for young Kimi, 18 years of age, this would have been his first experience of all this noise and speculation going on in the background, and him not being assured of his seat. I mean, was it Gunther Steiner that recently turned around and suggested that he should be loaned out for a year somewhere else? Was it along those lines? There was no guarantee that Kimi would have been the driver retained to be alongside Max. So that would have been a really tough thing for him to go through as well. So I can only really hope that now this Max talk has be going away, given this clause is now null and void effectively, that Toto will now sit down with his two drivers and get these contracts sorted. I mean, Toto did make the point as well that George will sleep well over the summer break. So that was quite a clear indication that George is going to be given a contract. Now, if I'm going to be Toto Wolff, and I'm thinking Max has got this additional clause in his contract for 2027, I'd be looking at it and I'd be going, I'm going to give George Russell a 2+1, but I'm only going to give Kimi, given the current poor run of form that he's in at the moment, just an additional 1-year contract for next year. And then that would make things pretty clear as to where they would be putting their eggs in which particular baskets going forward for 27 and 28.
You could also, build into Kimi's contract a provision that allows you to retain him, but not necessarily in a driving seat, or something that says you could, put him in another team. Yeah, there's many things they could do with that contract. Very interesting as well, though, is that Nico Rosberg over the weekend again said that Toto's tactic in negotiations is to disappear. And he described it as horrible to deal with, and you can completely understand why. And you just hope that he's not doing that with Kimi, because you can totally understand why an 18-year-old would be totally kind of freaked out or affected by that. And yes, Kimi's probably got people dealing with that. He's probably got a management structure in place, and I doubt he's really in those conversations at all. But that, you have to guess that Toto isn't taking that same line of approach with Kimi as he did evidently with Nico. And maybe things have changed. Maybe he's altered his approach. But yeah, so there's that factor as well that further adds weight to your point, Ian, that it is an incredibly difficult time for Kimi to go through, all the more difficult because of the Max speculation.
Just to very quickly conclude, because I'm conscious of time as well, I love the Nico quote as well that he came out with. Toto's the guy that doesn't have blue ticks on his WhatsApp.
Yeah.
So you do not know if you sent him a WhatsApp message whether Toto's read it or not. So I thought that was really funny.
Is that a setting? Oh, interesting. I might have to get that.
Oh, yeah. Cool. Did you not know?
PRs do it.
I did not know.
Did you not know that?
Wow.
Yes, mate. You could have
that now makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So maybe, Nick, you haven't, maybe all those girls from your past actually just left you on red and they did get the messages. I'm joking.
Oh, that's brutal.
Swiftly moving on, as I am a married man. Anyways, right
here.
We have got to end off with, of course, our predictions for the Hungarian Grand Prix. Ian, you are leading the championship, so on this occasion, you can go first.
Okay, well, there's a comment from Lando Norris post-race, and he turned around and basically said that he loves the Hungaroring. He's fully expecting that to be a much better circuit for him than Spa-Francorchamps. So just as I did for Spa-Francorchamps, the Belgian Grand Prix weekend, I'm going to go for a clean sweep for Lando of pole, fastest lap, race win, Oscar second, Max third, because that's the way things are going right now. We've had 3 McLaren 1-2s, 6 for the season, so it wouldn't surprise me around that circuit if we have another McLaren 1-2 as well. So that just leaves fastest pit stop. So do you know what? I'm going to switch allegiance. Ferrari, I'm sorry, you've had your time. Done, dusted. I'm going to Red Bull now. And 10th place, 10th position. Yeah, Gasly was 10th, wasn't he? An intriguing one on Sunday in Belgium.
So, he was.
I'm going to go... Who might be looking at? I'm going to go Yuki Tsunoda.
Interesting. Right, okay.
That's still my answer.
I've stolen your 10th place. You've gone 10th place Yuki all the time, haven't you? So, sorry,
yeah,
you can have the same. You can have the same if you wish.
You can have the same. Right, okay, I'll go next, and I'm going to say Oscar win, Oscar pole, Oscar win, Lando second, George Russell in third. I will say Esteban Ocon P10, and Lando Norris fastest lap with Ferrari fastest pit stop. I'll then go with Sarah, who's representing the fans from Germany for this weekend. And Sarah has predicted that Lando Norris will claim pole. Lando Norris will win ahead of Leclerc in second and Oscar Piastri in third. Gabriel Bortoletto will get 10th. Piastri fastest lap and Red Bull fastest pit stop. Sam, you are in last, so bring us home.
Yes. Nick
he's very pleased with himself now.
Yes, well done.
So Ian's actually kind of really gone in the same direction I was going to go. So I'm going to stick with it. I think Lando will win. I think Lando will get pole. I think Lando will win. I think Oscar will finish second. I do think Max will finish third. And I think fastest lap wise, though, I don't think it will be Lando. I think it will be Oscar who gets the fastest lap. And I think as for 10th place, obviously Yuki Tsunoda. Cannot possibly change that now. Although Ollie Behrman on a run, I think is it 4 11th places in a row? He's bound to be good at some point.
Oh,
but
poor boy.
Knowing our luck, he's going to finish 9th. So I'm sticking with Yuki. Fastest pit stop, let's go with Ferrari. Again, staying with that. And I think that's everything.
I think that that is everything. That
is
everything.
You are fully
that is
done.
everything. And that brings an end to this week's episode of the Racing News 365 podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, do not forget to let us know your thoughts on anything we've discussed in the comments below. And of course, subscribe to the channel and comment below any video I want to win if you'd like to win an Aston Martin cap. From myself, Sam and Ian, we'll see you this weekend for the Hungarian Grand Prix. See you later.
And we've got 2 Aston Martin caps to give away, folks. So please get subscribing. We'd love to hit 25,000 subscribers before we go into the summer break. So do all you can. Thank you ever so much. Thanks for watching, listening. As always, take care.
Thanks for joining us as always.